Without a question, one of the most renowned Hollywood actors of the current generation is Kevin Costner. The 70-year-old performer, however, is arguably among the greatest at capturing the spirit of the middle class on television. Like many other celebrities, Costner harbored a slight ambition to join the superhero gravy train, despite the Oscar winner's extensive resume of Western dramas. However, the actor's heart fell for one obvious reason when he finally received the script for DC's Man of Steel rather than being ecstatic. Let's disprove his anger. The Man of Steel script left Kevin Costner feeling dissatisfied. Kevin Costner was asked to play Kal-El, Superman's earthly adoptive father, Jonathan Kent, together with Diane Lane as Martha Kent, when DC chose to create a chic remake of the franchise's renowned Superman saga in the style of Man of Steel. However, Costner's portrayal was arguably one of the most grounded in a movie full of interplanetary superhero actions, because as an Earth native, he had any superhuman skills. The actor, however, apparently had issue with this part of his role and was frustrated by his character's lack of superhero abilities. In an interview with Cinema Blend, Costner recollected the emotion as he said, "Being the lone normal person in a superhero movie is just my luck. I thought, really? Can't I fly? And I'm not allowed to punch through the wall? Perhaps I ought to have read this more carefully. I work as a farmer." The Yellowstone star was initially discouraged by his assignment to the role of a farmer, but after giving it a lot of thought, the Dances with Wolves Oscar winner came to the conclusion that he can be that. It was probably better in the long run as well because Costner, who had portrayed working-class Americans in several westerns for decades, was most likely the perfect person to highlight Superman's earthly father's humanitarian qualities. Nevertheless, even after Costner landed the part, the character's debate hardly ever stopped. Despite the significance of his role, Jonathan Kent, played by Costner, met an unbelievable and sad end in the middle of the film. Jonathan, a fervent supporter of the notion that Clark Kent ought to conceal his superhuman powers, died bravely, or stupidly if one is a skeptic, while attempting to live true to his principles. The fact that Jonathan chose to die in a tornado rather than let Clark save him from it is what makes the character's death more contentious. I believed that it was based on skepticism, as Costner clarified in his interview. However, there was no question that he raises his hand and tells his son to stay there. Nevertheless, the actor remained unfazed by the character's heartbreaking, profoundly poignant demise. Instead, it served as a means for the character actor to maximize his on-screen time in Man of Steel. It is impossible to ignore the magnitude of Jonathan's sacrifice to preserve the identity of his adopted alien kid, regardless of one's views on death. Zack Snyder discusses why he chose Kevin Costner to play Jonathan Kent. Costner was not the only actor who saw Jonathan Kent's behavior as a heroic sacrifice, even though he elevated it from a noble folly. In an interview, Zack Snyder, the film's director, also said that they chose to cast Costner in that little role, in part to set the emotional foundation for the multi-layered movie. I think the thing you realize when you look at Diane and Kevin, in our decision to cast them so far, you sort of get a sense of how tonally we're looking at the movie, and what you realize is that those guys are serious actors, and we're taking this sutfug seriously in terms of the tone of having those guys. Snyder said in an interview with Gizmodo about his reasoning for casting Costner and Diane Lane. Despite his initial reservations, the Field of Dreams actor's nuanced portrayal of the character gave the movie depth and elevated Henry Cavill's Superman above the status of an extraterrestrial. Jonathan Kent's emotional sacrifice helped mold Clark Kent into a well-rounded human being despite not being a human. In the United States, Man of Steel may presently be streamed on Hulu.